Oh wow, this is beautiful out here. Let's check on this chicken. Smells good. Woo, looks good. Hey, what's going on? I didn't know you were listening over there. How's it going? Welcome to Gordon Speaks. We're just a variety show that talks about various topics, man, ranging from music to horror movies, to cultivation, to travel, to quantum physics. I have various guests and all sorts of different segments that are guaranteed to ignite your auditory and imaginative senses. If you like to laugh, if you like to smile, if you dig some variety in your life, come on over to Gordon Speaks. Check us out. We'll be here on the dock. Peace.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree. I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
Damn it, I'm really confused. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence, and he was dead when she hit the ground. I didn't see any cars. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence.
What? What are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Dia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Somebody along the line said that the universe is not only stranger than you think, it's stranger than you can think.
If you're green, you grow. If you're ripe, you rot. So I like to stay green until I'm not here anymore. Just keep learning, because that's what it's all about.
And welcome to the show, everybody. This is Bigfoot in the Citizen Scientist Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, and I want to thank you for being here. If you've had an encounter or story you would like to share with me, shoot me an email at sciencemeetsbigfoot@gmail.com, hit up the anchor.fm voice message system, or give the voicemail line a ring and leave your encounter or story there. That number is 641-715-3900 and punch in 448-449 for the extension. That's 641-715-3900, extension 448-449. Either way works, just get at me. Today, we go back to Southern California, back into the Joshua Tree National Park area, and have Jessica tell us of some hair-raising noises and experience that she had while camping out. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show.
Says Bill planned on leaving the park before dark, and when she still hadn't heard from him by Friday morning, she called rangers, who launched a search effort that's grown.
An incredible story of survival. A hiker survived 5 days alone out in Joshua Tree.
It all started on the last week of December in 2012. My mother and I were relaxing after work, watching TV, when out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement in our hallway. When I turned to look, I noticed two shadowy-like figures that appeared on our hallway wall. In disbelief of what I was seeing, I turned my head over towards my mother, and right as I did, she made eye contact with me and simply said, "You see them, don't you?" I said yes. She told me not to acknowledge them because they're entities that can sense fear, but in disbelief, I looked back over at the hallway wall, and they were gone. A few days had gone by, and my mother told me she felt a sense of dread and said someone in our family is going to pass away before the end of the year. Well, on New Year's Eve, 2012, my mother and I celebrated at home. We watched the movie Tron and had a pizza delivered to ring in the new year. I've always been a real mama's boy, so this was an ideal way for me to spend my New Year's Eve. Around 11 p.m. that night, we saw the two figures again. This time, we both experienced an overwhelming quietness and sense of urgency and dread. We both did our best to ignore it, and eventually the shadowy figures and the senses went away. We discussed the experience, and again my mother told me to never acknowledge them, and before I could press her for more details, my mother started telling me how much I meant to her and that I would go on to do great things in my life. She loved me, etc. She then got up and walked towards the kitchen, turned around and said, "I love you," then fell to the ground. I had previous EMT training and am certified in CPR, so I dialed 911 and explained to them my mother is in cardiac arrest and I needed medical assistance ASAP. I was doing CPR on my mother for nearly 20 minutes, and for anyone who's ever done CPR, it's not easy. The EMTs arrived at 11:38 p.m., and my mother was taken to the emergency room. By this time, our neighbor and friend Bonnie had rushed over to my house and drove me to the hospital. When I checked in at the front desk, I was taken to a small private room, and the head physician told me that my mother had passed away. The autopsy showed my mother suffered from a fatal heart attack, and her time of death was 11:59 p.m. on December 31st, 2012. When I was taken in to see her one last time, her lips were blue, she was cool to the touch, but she was still my mom. So I just hugged her and couldn't let go for nearly 30 minutes. Thankfully, my neighbor Bonnie was there and gave me plenty of support and encouragement to leave, as my mother would want me to stay strong. Fast forward to about 6 months after my mother died, I'd quit my job and had become a recluse. I would only leave my house to purchase groceries. I quickly realized how severely depressed I was and decided it was time to get away. I ended up traveling to Joshua Tree National Park and decided it would be my getaway to find some peace and closure. I notified my neighbor Bonnie not to worry, that I'm just going on a day's hike and would be back by midnight. When I arrived at Joshua Tree, I parked my Jeep and entered the Lost Palms Oasis Trail. After a few hours of walking and hiking, I stopped to take a break and eat. As I finished up and looked around, nothing looked familiar, and I in fact was not on any trail. I was not too worried and felt confident I would find my way back, but as I made my way through the desert landscape that I did not recall ever passing, I started feeling like I was being watched. I started to panic. Then I started hearing strange growling noises, but could not determine from what direction they were coming from. It almost seemed like they were all around me. So I stood in one spot and made a 360-degree rotation. As I came to a stop, I saw something transparent, no defining shape, just a blur directly in front of me that was coming closer and closer to where I was standing. I quickly turned around and started walking faster and faster in the opposite direction, and then experienced the same overwhelming quietness and sense of urgency and dread I had experienced with my mother just 6 months prior. Then all of a sudden, almost like a snap of a finger, daytime turned into night. I wasn't sure what was going on, but knew something wasn't right. After walking around in the dark, I found myself by a large rock, about as big as a large SUV, and felt safest there. I put my back against the rock, this way I felt nothing would sneak up behind me. I used the night to hydrate and eat some snacks I brought. I remember trying to make sense out of what I was experiencing, but knew that my mother and I had already experienced something within our own home. But at least when I was home, I felt safe. Here, I was vulnerable and alone. As I tried to rest that night, I started seeing a number of shadowy entities walking around in the desert, almost as if they were wandering around aimlessly. It freaked me out, and the more I acknowledged them, the closer they got to me. At one time during the night, I remember feeling something breathing down my neck. Remember, my back was against a huge rock. I just closed my eyes and did my best to keep them shut. The last thing I remember about that night was opening my eyes and seeing 3 shadowy figures, one at each side and one directly in front of me. Then once again, in a snap, it was morning. I would experience the same weirdness for 2 more days until the last day. On the last day of me roaming around Joshua Tree, I hadn't had any food or water since the initial first night. I was scared and dehydrated. I came upon another large rock and remembered in my EMT training that digging a hole near a rock in the desert will keep you cool and less likely to get severe sunburn. I did just that and thought to myself, I'm literally digging my own grave. By the time I laid down in the 2-foot arched hole I'd made and covered my chest and legs up with dirt, I blacked out. I don't remember anything for the rest of that day or night. The next morning, I was woken by an off-duty search and rescue employee who was literally making me choke on water. I remember him saying, "There are a whole lot of people out looking for you, buddy." I was picked up by helicopter and taken to a regional medical center in Palm Springs, California. In the days during my recovery, I saw 2 detectives, a number of psychiatrists, and my neighbor Bonnie, who was there at the hospital by my side 100% of the way. The detectives wanted to close the missing persons report my neighbor Bonnie made the second day I was missing, but they asked me strange questions like, was I using a flare gun in the area? No. And why had I purchased a large amount of camping gear and survival materials prior to my hike? I'm going for a hike. Strange questions to ask someone, or maybe it's just me. The physician stated he thought I was planning to kill myself due to the loss of my mother, but honestly, that never crossed my mind. The psychiatrist told me I didn't experience anything but hallucinations due to the lack of food and water and effects of dehydration. My neighbor Bonnie overheard my story and later confided in me that she too experienced similar shadowy figures when she hiked in Joshua Tree. When I arrived back home, she used sage and other New Age methods to rid my house of whatever darkness was there. However, it continued all the way up until my move to Tennessee in 2014. By far the most aggressive was the transparent entities that were in Joshua Tree. I felt like everything was about to end when I encountered them. I've always wondered if my mother experienced more than what happened that night. I'm not sure what the hell happened those few days in Joshua Tree National Park, but from what I can remember, during the moments when daytime would turn into night in a snap, I felt like I was falling down or being suspended in midair before completely realizing what was going on. I also remember a strong urge to go to Joshua Tree. I would think about going all the time, and when I finally went, I almost felt like I was being called there by something. My sister often talks about my first week living in Tennessee. She said that she felt like a demon was attached to me. One night as I slept on her couch, I woke up with her putting holy water on my head and saying a prayer over me. But I don't believe in all that. I used to. But nowadays, I have an easier time believing in alien abductions and portals rather than being followed around by a demon. But then again, who knows, right? Finally, I can tell you with 100% honesty, I experienced all the above. I can't explain what it or what they were, but I can tell you I feel like my life was spared for some strange reason. Perhaps I didn't meet the requirements for whatever it is they need. Looking back now, I would never have gone hiking alone. But again, I remember this irresistible urge to go to Joshua Tree and would frequently feel like I was being called there.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Citizen Scientist podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, and I want to thank you for being here. We got Jessie on the line today, and she's going to tell us a little bit about some of her experiences. So say hello, Jessie.
Hi, Tyler. I'm Jessie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Jessie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm 28 years old. I'm from Southern California originally, born and raised in Huntington Beach. And let's see, at the time, now I'm living in like the UK. At the time of my encounter, it was August 19th, 2019. And I was a flight attendant at the time. Now I am pregnant and living in the UK. So things have changed a bit.
Okay.
But I'm a camper, not usually mountains, usually desert camping. A little bit of camping up north too, like in Big Sur and stuff like that. Beach camping, stuff like that. I'm really into like surfing and skateboarding and all sorts of stuff like that.
Okay. Way awesome.
Yeah.
Just you know, I'm gonna be when you're talking, I'm gonna be muting my microphone. It just gives you the floor. So
okay, cool.
If any, what was your background or knowledge to the subject before your experience?
Before my experience, not a lot really. Like I would say not as much. I was more of like a skeptic, I guess, for sure. When I mean, my brother would mention things and I would listen to him kind of, but like, I was definitely more on like the skeptical side about anything with like Sasquatch or anything. I kind of just thought it was like goofy, you know? So that's kind of like where I was at with it. Like with my encounter, like I didn't go into, like, I didn't think that immediately, like, what's out here? What's going on? Like, is that Sasquatch? You know, it wasn't like that at all. After my encounter is when I started thinking, wow, this must have been something else kind of thing, you know?
Okay. Approximately when and where did your encounter sighting take place?
Yeah, so basically it was summer of 2019, living out in Southern California. Like we would go, basically, like me and my best friend at the time, we would go out and like, you know, we would be at the beach all day and we'd be like, oh, should we go camp? Like, let's go drive out to Joshua Tree for the night, you know? So basically, yeah, it was at Joshua Tree, Jumbo Rock Campground, actually. So it's one of the further campgrounds out there. You know, if you're familiar at all with Joshua Tree, it's pretty big, but there's a lot of different campsites, and you can like Jumbo Rocks Campground is like one of the ones that it's further. I don't know if it's like, if you're coming in towards Joshua Tree, like the town, and you come in that way, it's basically, you're on the farther side. And so getting to Jumbo Rocks from that way, it's a bit of a drive for sure. So, yeah, that's like usually where we would go and camp, and we would kind of like park up, and then, we would like go over, kind of take our stuff, and we would like hike over the rocks. Like we wouldn't hike at an actual, campsite, but we would park our car there. And, basically it was August. So it's like definitely the time of year where there's not a lot of campers at all. And so let me think. So we started driving out there. It was last minute. It was nighttime. We did that like sometimes where it was nighttime. Let's go camp. It's summertime, you know. But the moon wasn't out that night, so it was pretty dark. And on our way out there, it was kind of weird. Like the wildlife was like a lot at the time. Like there were so many coyotes running across the road. Like probably, I think we counted like maybe 7 at the time, which was kind of a lot, but I didn't really think anything of it. I was just like, whoa, there's a lot going on out here right now. That's kind of crazy. So anyways, we get out to Jumbo Rocks Park, and then like, my friend's a musician, so she like brought her guitar. We had like our foam mats with us, like some Mexican blankets to bring. And, we like hiked over the rocks, and I'm pretty familiar with that area because I've like hiked out there a lot, and like I know kind of like all of the big cave areas and stuff out there, so I'm pretty familiar with what's going on, you know. And I'm also like, I've camped out there so many times, and it's somewhere that I feel really safe. I've never felt scared out there. Like, I mean, to go out and not camp in a tent, you know, you're just camping under the stars kind of. Like for me, like I have to feel very safe, not vulnerable or anything. And yeah, so that's kind of what Joshua Tree has always been for me until this, pretty much. So yeah, we go and hike over the rocks. We're not like crazy far from the car, but far enough to where, you know, if anything went down, we would have to kind of pick up and run. And so we're out there, and I think we like maybe brought some chocolate with us. My friend was playing music, and it was really nice night, but it was super dark. And I've only kind of camped out there maybe when the moon has been out a little bit, but there was like no moon. So yeah, there was a lot of animals out there that night, like everywhere. Like if you flashed your light, you would just see like little eyes everywhere, you know. It was crazy. Like, yeah, so you'd see like little eyes, and you know, there's fox out there, there's all sorts of little animals, but I wasn't scared or anything. So basically we were out there for a while. My friend's playing music, and yeah, it's getting later, so she starts going to bed, and I'm still kind of just looking at the stars, relaxing. And yeah, everything seemed fine. And then kind of all of a sudden, like I hear this sound that I honestly like can't explain. You know, I'm like, I know the animals that are out here, like there's no, I mean, it sounded like a beast. And it came from, I know that there's some really big kind of deep caves out there. And it like echoed through like the canyon area kind of that we were at. And it sounded like something was between like something being in distress or something mating. I don't know. But we got up quickly and started bailing quick. It felt like forever sitting in that moment. Like the sound was, it's so hard to explain. It's just like my husband asked, like, how did it sound? And I'm just like, I can't even like tell you how it sounds. It's just so deep and like beastly sounding. Not like a bear, not like a mountain lion, not like anything I've ever heard. And Joshua Tree doesn't have, it's not like the mountains where maybe there's more big animals. Like there's not a lot out there. Not a lot can survive out there even. So it was crazy sounding and so loud. And I had never listened to any like Sasquatch sounds before or anything. So nothing like that like went through my mind when I heard this. So we both instantly were very, very scared. And it was so stupid because since we're so comfortable camping out there, basically we had a lot of stuff with us. Like I felt like we had too much stuff with us. And I'm like, I was almost scared enough to like leave all of our stuff and just run. But at the same time, we just grabbed, like I had a pretty big foam mattress thing that I brought with me, like a topper thing. And I was like, why do I have all this stuff with me? Like, you know, but the thing is like, that just goes to show I felt safe out there. It was fine to like, you know, load up like it's like your bedroom out there. And it also wasn't like my first time I've slept under the stars out there. It was like, I've slept out there several times. So yeah. So basically we grabbed our stuff and like bailed. Like it was scary to see my friend that scared too, because she's just so not like that. And she was like, we have to get out of here. So we ran back to our car basically. And we kind of kind of sat there and listened to see if we could hear it. And once you're kind of at the campsite, you feel a bit safer, you know. There was really no campers though. There was maybe like a couple of cars in that campsite, and like Jumbo Rock's campground is like pretty big. So for there not to be like, there was not a lot of people out there. So it would have made sense if animals were more cruising around and stuff, because just not as much, you know, fear for them, for people or whatever. So anyways, we get back to the car, and my friend's car is pretty small. So we're like, we're not going to sleep in this car. So we just decided to sleep in the tent basically. And I felt a lot safer sleeping in a tent, and I was all right with that. But yeah, pretty much after that, slept in tent. My friend didn't sleep all night. I fell asleep. I was scared, but I think the adrenaline that I felt, I was tired. I was like, I got to get some sleep. So I got a couple hours of sleep. And yeah, like on the way home, basically the next morning, nothing happened through the night, thankfully. You know, you never know. But like, I'm a Christian and I was praying to God all night pretty much. And so yeah, I was just like asking for protection and stuff because you don't know what's out there. And yeah, so anyways, we on our way home the next morning, got a coffee and we were talking a little bit driving home, and I'm, you know, on my phone trying to play different animal sounds. Like I'm going through every single mountain lion sound there is, because that's the only big animal that I know that's out there. Nothing sounded like this thing. I'm like, a mountain lion is nothing compared to what this was, whatever it was. And I'm going through the sounds, like everything, nothing sounded like that. And there was one sound, maybe it was of a mountain lion mating or something. And my friend's like, yeah, that kind of sounded like it. And I'm like, nope, that was not it at all. It was so much more quiet and stuff. And yeah, so I was kind of like, it kind of was left at that between her and I. And we didn't talk about it much after that. Like it would come up sometimes, but yeah. So basically after that, I had told like my parents what happened, and then my brother found out what happened. And I kind of was like, it almost sounds like something else. And that's kind of when I kind of started digging into, you know, what is Sasquatch, and then listening to different encounters. And some of the sounds that I've heard from encounters and things like that, and what people have talked about, is sounded so similar to, you know, what I experienced. But yeah, pretty much up until my encounter, I didn't think that it could have been anything else but an animal, like, you know what I mean? Like an animal that we know of. And so after this, I was like, that, I think that it was a Sasquatch. And I started researching, like, you know, that area, Joshua Tree, Yucca Valley, 29 Palms. And I started researching, and I only really came across like a couple of older encounters pretty much, of like military guys and things like that. So until I came across Tyler's podcast, and I saw that he posted the other day, and I was like, sweet, what the heck? Finally, like another encounter out there, because I think there's more. But yeah, I think that the reason that people kind of shut down if they do have something that happens to them is because, you know, like I was talking to my friend about it, like later on, after I kind of had it in my head, it could have been, you know, Sasquatch maybe. And her and her boyfriend like straight up laughed at me and made me feel like I was crazy. So I kind of like shut down after that. I'm like, I'm not talking to anybody about it. And yeah, so pretty much that's where it was left. But yeah, I know it's not much of an encounter, but if you were there, you would have. It was wild. It was wild and super scary. And I will never, ever, ever go and camp out in Joshua Tree on a rock if it like that again, probably. Honestly, like I after that, I'm like, nope. So yeah.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow. So this the sound you heard, your friend clearly heard it, right? Like she was scared.
She's a deep sleeper, and she woke up and was like, what was that? And then I was like, something is out here. Yeah. And so yeah, she heard it.
And you're familiar enough with wildlife, and you're saying you were looking up all the different calls and whatnot. You didn't find anything close to what you heard, right?
No, it was like, it sounded like a monster. Straight up, it sounded like a monster, where I'm like, and you know, my friend's there too, so I'm not like, this is happening, this is real, right? Like, what is this? You know, it wasn't. And I've actually even had mountain lion encounters too. I've seen one up close before. This was different. Whatever this animal was, had to have been massive, like massive, because of how far it sounded like it was coming from, like, I had almost camped in one of the caves out there, stupid enough, almost. And that's like, it honestly sounded like it was echoing from one of those caves. And it was loud. I mean, like, yeah, it must have been a massive animal. I don't know. But to me, it's like, what could it have been? You know, it's wild to me. I believe that it was a Sasquatch. And I think that easily, they could be living out there, because especially that time of year, you know, it's summertime. There's not a lot of people that are out there. Like, people don't go and camp out in Joshua Tree in the middle of the summer when it gets like 120 degrees out, you know. And it was super weird. I want to like speak about a little bit, like, the animals were weird how they were acting. I've never seen so many animals out there, like, ever. And I don't know, maybe just because there wasn't a lot of people, but like, I mean, seeing like 7 coyotes is crazy. Like, I've heard coyotes when I've been out there, but just like, animals were just like running, like they were going wild that night. And I don't know if it's because they were scared or something was going on, but it felt like there was something going on out there, you know. Like the tension with the animals, all like, even putting my light up, you know, and seeing how many, like, they were all there. Yeah. They were very like aware of something going on, you know.
Well, you know, that's a commonly heard thing.
Is it?
In the Bigfoot world, of where wildlife is either non-existent and dead quiet, or they're all running.
Yeah. That's how it felt. It was like, it felt like they were all trying to run away from something, or there was something going on, you know. And the sound that this thing made, it wasn't like a kind sound. It wasn't like, you know, you hear some encounters of people where it sounds kind of like, you know, like they're echoing or something, or it sounds like words. It wasn't like that. It was like, this thing was either in distress or they were pissed off, something, you know. So yeah, it was pretty freaky.
And you said you heard it like an echo, right? Like, almost like it was in a cave status, like, because there's a distinct difference that I've heard, at least, you know.
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like I wouldn't say like an echo exactly, but I just mean like the sound that it was coming from, it made it echo. And I don't know if it's because where we were at, if you're familiar with Jumbo Rocks at all, and you get into the park basically, and you park on one of the left campsites and you go and hike over there, like, there's like, rock climbers will go and climb those rocks. There's some really big rocks on the left side, if you're familiar, like the biggest kind of, I think some of the highest rocks in Joshua Tree. And it was just, I guess, echoing out of something. It just sounded very much like the sound was coming, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's like, you know, I don't mean it in a way of like echoing, like, you know, but yeah.
Did it have like that reverberating hollow sound? Is that kind of like what you mean by echoing?
Maybe, yeah. And like I said, I don't know if it's just because it was hitting off the rocks and it just sounded so loud for where we were at. It was so loud, like, where it's like, this is crazy. It sounded like, yeah, just so loud, where it's like, if this gets any, like, that's why we were leaving so quick, because it was so loud. And it's like, how close is this thing, you know? But it sounds really big. And but we sat there and, like, at first I was like, we didn't even know what it was, but we sat there and listened for a second before we got up, and we were like, kind of the adrenaline like settled in, and then we were like, okay, fight or flight, gotta go, you know.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wild.
If you can remember, if you can even describe it, can you describe the pitch of what you heard? Was it just a straight,
so it was super, super deep. And like, actually my husband was like talking to me today, because he knew I was going to talk to you today. And he was like, so like, can you say the sound? And I'm like, it's just like, like that, like deep and like intense, very like deep, like in distress, deep, you know what I mean? Like, and that's why I was like, almost like a deep, distressful moan, like very like where you're like, this is the boogeyman. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is this? I do not want to be here. This is something, this is like, and I mean, you know, in a lot of senses, it's like, you know, you hear a lot of like scary like Bigfoot encounters and stuff. And it's like, kind of is like a monster in some senses. I know people have good encounters and stuff, but you know, it's still a beast that we don't know a whole lot about and stuff. But yeah, it was just very, that's what scared me, because it sounded more in distress. At first I was like, is it like, it sounds like a beast between mating and like being in distress and scared, or not scared, but like hurt or something.
Okay. Okay,
yeah,
so it wasn't so much a get out of my area as you took it. It was more of a, well, other than being scared, obviously, it was more of a like it hurt, maybe, is what I'm gathering.
Yeah, like whether, I don't know if it just, because I feel like if it knew that we were there, it would have like we would have heard it coming or something. But it sounded like it was in the same spot and it was staying there. And it was just, it sounded very much like in distress for sure. Unless, you know, it's like, and it's like, we don't know what these things, you know, what it sounds like when they're in distress, or what it sounds like when they're like mating or whatever. But yeah, it was definitely, didn't sound like it was doing all right. That's for sure. You know, it was very loud.
Well, okay. What effects, if any, have you experienced since you heard? I mean, did you have any issues sleeping the next night? Did you have any like nightmares?
No.
All right.
No, I was okay. I didn't, I mean, it's been a little while. That was August 2019, and I didn't talk about it a lot, but now I'm like, okay to talk about it or whatever, but mostly because, you know, it was super scary. But at the time, you know, I think it makes maybe makes a difference if you're like a skeptic. Like when it happened, I didn't like believe in Bigfoot really at all. And then it started after, kind of pretty much after that. I was a flight attendant for 6 years. And so pretty much after that, I basically would listen to Bigfoot podcasts like all the time and hear people's stories, because I was like, I want to know, like, am I crazy? Like, because my friend doesn't think that this is something. She didn't want to talk about it anymore. And she was like, it was a mountain lion. It was a mountain lion. And it was very much like she didn't want to talk about it more, you know? And I was like, I never heard. We went through all the sounds on the way home and of different mountain lion calls. And, you know, I never heard anything. There was nothing that matched it. So yeah, I mean, kind of after that, I just started listening to more podcasts and kind of trying to research, the area and if anybody had any encounters out there. And like I said, there's only like older encounters and stuff. So I was kind of like, maybe it wasn't anything, but I knew that it was something more than because there's no explanation for it, you know? And that was kind of the biggest thing, where it's like, well, what was this? There's not an explanation. This wasn't a cat. This was literally like a beast of an animal and something big. So, yeah, but no problem sleeping or anything like that. If anything, it just kind of was the thing to spark my, where I'm not a skeptic anymore, you know? Yeah. So.
Wow. You know, oftentimes, you know, I tell everyone, oftentimes, especially in an unknown situation like what you're describing, it's your gut knows what's up. If your gut feeling tells you it's this and you need to leave, then it's that and you need to leave. You know,
totally.
I believe it comes down to our ancestors back in the day. I believe that these things, or Gigantopithecus, one of the two or something, was around, and we automatically had that instinct kick in to where we know that we're in danger. And there's not a lot of things on this earth that trigger that. I think close encounter bear and cougar are the only two things I can think of in the Pacific Northwest that you would feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you would hear, see, and you would know both of those situations when they were at you. So
yeah,
it's kind of weird. That's definitely daunting. If you could experience it again, would you?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, if I could maybe hear the sound again, maybe, but like also at the same time, like the sound stuck in my head so good that like I don't need to experience it again. And if I wanted to go out to Joshua Tree again and go sleep under the rocks out there when, you know, on kind of like low season basically, where there's no people out there hardly, I don't know. It was spooky. It was really spooky. I'm not I'm not super interested in having that happen again. That's for sure. Cause it was like probably the most scared I had been for sure. I've had other experiences like in life, but that was like one of the top first by far. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you to dig into your brain deep and try to remember little tiny details about that night. So do you remember the temperature or the time of night that it happened?
It happened super late at night. Like, I'm trying to think because we drove out there at night. Wait, I have a photo, and I took a photo before I tried to go to sleep. But I don't know if I can. 1 second. Yeah, I can't get to it. But I think it probably was like 2 a.m. or later for sure. Okay. And I was super, super uneasy that night. That's the only thing I could say. Like I said, I'm not a super scared person. Like I've slept out there, that same area, like several times, you know, and like we would go out there and like go sleep on the rocks and bring, like, I'm not a big drinker. We'd bring like soda and like candy and all sorts, which is so stupid if you think about it, like bringing all types of junk and going and sleeping in nature and falling asleep with candy all around you. Like I have done that several times out there. So I wasn't scared to go sleep out there. But that night I don't know, my intentions were like, I was like very much alert, and I wasn't relaxed at all. Like I just felt like something was going on. I just felt like the animals, how they were acting alone kind of freaked me out just because I've never seen. And then also like if you go and camp out there, like the moon, if you go camp out there when the moon is full, or not even full, if the moon's out, you can pretty much go on a hike at night. Right. And it was so dark out there that like, that was also weird. It was very dark. So like, honestly, like if the moon would have been out, like an animal like Bigfoot couldn't be like roaming around without it getting spotted easier. You know what I mean? So it was like really like the perfect night for something to be cruising around and not be seen, you know?
Yeah.
And especially, you know, like there is a lot of caves and stuff out there, and like cool kind of areas that you can get cooler in and stuff. Me and my husband, like this was like longer. I think this was like 3 years ago. We almost even went and slept. We almost camped out in one of it's not exactly a cave. It's like you're in between two super, super high rocks. And we were going to go sleep out there actually. So I really know like the area. I've hiked all kind of around there and cruised all around there. So I'm like very familiar with the area. But yeah, that night felt really off, you know? Yeah, it didn't, I wasn't calm or anything. And I don't know if it's like, it wasn't me. I don't think. I felt like it was like the tension. There was something going on out there. That's for sure. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was my next question, was about the moon, but it sounds like it was an overcast night. It sounds like, right? Some cloud cover over the moon.
So it wasn't overcast, but the moon was really, really small, and it wasn't rising. Like, okay. I think that maybe it started rising once we were like bailing, but it was not a lot of light at all. Like, I mean, it felt like there was like no moon at all that whole night, pretty much.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it was very, very dark. There was still stars though. It wasn't overcast or anything. But yeah.
Okay.
It was very, very dark. And yeah, it can be like feel like daylight out there if the moon's out. So yeah, it was definitely different.
The cave kind of, I've always kind of pushed that off to like, yeah, that's just people's theories and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Until I just saw, and I've done no investigation on this, so I'm not saying this is credible or anything, but I don't know if you've seen it, but if you have seen in any of the Facebook groups, this photographer just took a picture in a cave and caught a whole bunch of creatures in it with just glowing eyes. And I'll pull up on my share screen here in a second. Let's see if you can see it. Can you see what's going on? Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if you go, so for the listeners, I'll just read this.
Yeah.
It says, have you seen this picture?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It says, this photo is said to have been taken by photographer Orrin Jeffries while he was exploring some unmapped area of the Grand Caverns in Virginia. Jeffries liked to use exposure technique to catch anything without any light whatsoever. While he was setting up for his snaps, he heard something in the distance which spooked him. He set off one of his Blischitz flashes, however you say that word, he used for taking traditional photos underground and ran. In a later interview he gave to a local newspaper, he said that he saw, quote, humanoid figures looking back at him. A few days after that, he went back with a few friends to retrieve his box camera, which had this picture recorded inside of it. And to the listeners, if you go on my YouTube page and watch this interview, you can look at this picture right now, and I will also post it on the Facebook profile or a Facebook group. But this is the photo that was captured.
Dang.
Call it fake, call it real, authentic. The background, I don't know anything about. The photographer, I know nothing about. This picture looks like it could be authentic, but it's 2021. So
yeah, it's pretty wild though. I mean, because especially with the outline of like kind of the weird person kind of outline.
Yes,
on the right. Yeah.
There's the humanoid figure on the right hand side.
Yeah.
And you can almost, it looks like you can almost make out like a white line that's possibly a streak or his mouth, but
yeah,
you can clearly see two glowing eyes right there.
Yeah,
down below
totally.
and to the left.
Yeah.
There is a figure right here which you can't really see.
Mm-hmm.
It's like maybe it's just a shadow. So we can say there's three figures in this picture that you can for sure. It's been a lot of people's assumption that they stay in caves. So
I mean, if you think about it, depending on like I guess where you're at or where the encounter is at or whatever, but like somewhere, maybe where I don't know where that picture was taken, but it's like sometimes that's all you can, that's the only place that's like viable for living, is a cave, know, so who knows?
My computer is freaking out on me. Sorry, give me 1 second. It's what let me get
You're
back to that. I need to upgrade my computer. So
yeah, I don't know, like just somewhere like the desert where I was at, there's not a lot of places to live for something like Bigfoot. And the thing is like, from Joshua Tree, there are so many different, like even you were talking about on your last podcast, like there are so many different mountain ranges, and there's so much room for animals to roam. So, whether they migrate, I don't really know, but there isn't a lot for something that big to like, hide out and stuff. But out there in the heat of the summer, they could totally hang out in a cave, where there's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of people hiking out there at that time, and then maybe they bail and they go to the mountains, you know, however many miles away, you know, over when you get out of the desert a little bit. But I mean, it's a clear shot. You can just go straight from, I think you can pretty much go straight from Joshua Tree, cruise over by, you know, Palm Springs, and just keep going. And then there's mountain ranges, right?
Yeah.
So they could, I mean, yeah.
I'm looking it up on the map right now. Yeah, because if any of the stories are accurate to their speed, their endurance, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's highly feasible that they're trekking from the wooded areas to the desert.
Yeah.
Highly feasible. So.
Yeah. And if there's not a, like, you know, when you're in the mountains more, even in that area, there's like other animals that are trying to eat food too. So maybe like going out to the desert for them is easier to get food. I don't know. But the animals definitely out there that night seemed super sketched out, like something was after them, to be honest. And there's a lot of coyotes out there. But it was the most I've ever seen, like running across the road. Like my friend almost hit like 2 of them when we were driving. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of wild just because there hasn't been that many encounters out there. So I'm curious, you know, just as time goes on, if there will be more, you know, or if it's just kind of more of a rare thing. I don't know.
So I'm seeing here Sheep Hole Valley Wilderness. Are you familiar with that area?
I've heard of it. I'm not familiar, but I've heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Joshua Tree area you're talking about, it is a lot of pure desert.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people that are watching this can see this, how well it's going to pick up. No, it's not going to pick up at all. So it's probably, as the crow flies, 20 miles.
Yeah.
Approximately from the desert to the trees.
Yeah.
So you take 20 miles. I mean, that's good. That would take a human how long? So you get something that's averaged 8 to 10 feet. And that's no time at all. That's no time.
Yeah, especially with how like a lot of people say that they can go super quick, you know, like, you know, like you've even said, yeah, so you just don't know how quick they can get around.
That's exactly it. To the listeners, you go on Google Maps, whatever mapping system you use, you just type in Joshua Tree National Park, and you can see how close to Desert Palm or Palm Desert, Indigo, Palm Springs. Oh, it's Indio. Is it Indio? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Another thing. So like, yeah, a lot of people think Palm Springs, they think, you know, hotels, stuff like that. But like Palm Springs is super small. And a lot of the time, like I'd go out with my friends, we like in the kind of more high time where like the campgrounds were all full. We would go and camp out on the other side of Joshua Tree, Cottonwood Heights. I think it's like Cottonwood something. And it's like on the other opposite side. So basically more towards Palm Springs side of things. And we would go and camp out in the BLM area. And super flat. There's like mountains and stuff, but it's like really flat. It's all free. It's, you know, borough land management. So we'd camp out there for free. And then during the day, we would go to like, there's like Talkwitz Canyon, and it's kind of touristy and stuff. But I will say there are like full on like goats that are like mountain goats. And I've like seen them like cruise down to take like a drink of water and stuff. And there's like a waterfall there. So it's just like, and that's like kind of like a little bit of a protected area. But even that, like when you go, if you ever go on that hike over there, we would go and like, you know, on a hot day after being camp out in BLM land, go hit Talkwitz waterfall, and we'd go swim in the waterfall, whatever. It's kind of lame because you have to pay and stuff, but like they do it because, you know, to keep everything clean and everything. But it's like very big and vast, and there's like huge mountains right around there. So it's just like I mean, there's like full on mountain goats, you know, so it just goes to show there's eating out there for for animals, you know.
Yeah.
And just there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of land, you know, so much different than you know, cities and suburbs and stuff like that. There's a lot of room. So even though it's hot and very, you know, vast and desolate, there's still those nooks and crannies where things can live, I believe.
I'm completely in agreement with you. 100%. So what do you, your personal belief, I know you've been doing quite a bit of research since your experience. What do you think Bigfoot is?
See, it's like part of me believes that it's like an animal that has just been like very well hidden for a long time. And yeah, part of me believes that, but then like another part of me believes that it is an animal and then like that the government like knows about it and stuff and they're like keeping it from everyone, you know. I mean, I do believe that the government knows about it for sure. But then you hear about, you know, people's encounters where, you know, where it's like, is it like extraterrestrial? Is it like alien or something too mixed in there? Just because like some of that stuff is weird too. So I don't know. I kind of am like a little bit out of a crossroad where I kind most of me just thinks it's an animal that's just like never went extinct and has been hidden super well for a long time. And like maybe it's because the government like, and maybe they're super smart and that they're like, they know that people will like mess with them if they find out, you know what I mean? Yeah, so I'm kind of like that pretty much. I don't know, but then you do hear stories about more like weird, like the orb and stuff like that. You hear about that and you're like, oh, like is it something more? But yeah, I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I would say I'm a bit more towards it is just, I do think it kind of is more of an animal that has just been super great at keeping hidden for the most part.
Yeah. Well, from the famous words of Wes Grimmer, there's no right or wrong answer, and you could be right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many different theories. There's highly credible people that have come on and their encounter ranges throughout the entire gambit. So who's to know what they are? I'm always curious to see what people think. So
totally. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Jesse, I want to thank you for coming on today. You had one crazy of an experience. I hope.
Thank you.
I hope you never stop digging into it.
Yeah, it's. I think things like, you know, you even making this podcast, you know, and getting the word out there more, because I was a full-on skeptic and I would never think that I would go, you know, on a podcast and tell my story, and I was super nervous. And yeah, I'm just super not like that. But, you know, with more podcasts like this and stuff, I think people will be more open to sharing their encounters and stuff like that. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's always, people always just kind of take it as a joke, but if people are serious about it, there's a lot of cryptid, but specifically Bigfoot museums out there. Lawrence Coleman has one. Cliff Barrickman has one out near me, and a lot of those. In fact, I'll be doing an episode within the next couple months with Cliff, interviewing Cliff, and doing a virtual tour of his museum.
Awesome.
So, yeah, make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. But there's so much evidence Cliff's museum. They just added a hoaxing piece up. So they got Ray Wallace's actual clompers on display, and
oh my gosh,
yes, and they show you the difference between a authentic print versus a fake print. Like it's easily findable. So you guys, everybody should go check those out if there's one near you. Each of those also have a website you can go on and look at what they have there. So go check those out. So Jesse, I want to thank you again so much for coming on. Thank you so much. I hope your your learning about the subject always continues. You never stop because there's so much to learn about it. So
Definitely. Thank you so much, Tyler.
And that's all I have for you today. I want to thank Jessie for having the courage to come on and share her experience. I know from experience how hard it can be to talk about these types of things, and how it's even harder to come on to a public forum and share with the world. So thank you for your courage and strength to retell your story. It might just help someone out there that listens to this. It was a true honor and even more of a privilege that you chose Bigfoot and the Citizen Scientist podcast for your very first ever interview. I'm sure I speak for the audience when I say that was eerie and an unforgettable story. I know whenever I'm in Southern California, the Southern California hominid stories is all I'm going to be thinking about. Please be sure to keep us up to date on anything new you experience or learn. We're all in this together. So if you enjoyed the show, be sure to share it around the dinner table, in your next Zoom meeting, shout it out from the mountaintops. I don't care how you share it, just share away. The interview you just heard can be found on the Bigfoot and the Citizen Scientist podcast YouTube page, so make sure to subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, and also that bell notification to stay up to date. So in closing, love yourself, love others, be kind, be safe, and until next time.
It's silent now, we don't say a word. We're just looking at each other. Tears in our eyes from the words we said. Yeah, it kinda broke my heart. Loving you is not so goddamn easy as you think. I'm trying my best to hold on, but I feel myself giving. You know that we shouldn't keep it up like this. We hurt each other's feelings on and on. I don't wanna change who you are. The things you say is always one step too far. But I know that I've played my part. I'm hurting you as well. I guess that we should say we're sorry. Say we're sorry. Say we're sorry. I guess that we should say we're sorry. Say we're sorry. Say we're sorry. Start again, don't give up, we're holding on. For what it's worth, I'll try to change. We can't fix our broken hearts. Loving me is not so goddamn easy as I think. You try your best to hold up, but I see you giving in. You know that we shouldn't keep it up like this. We hurt each other's feelings on and on. I don't wanna change who you are. You say is always one step too far. But I know that I've played my part. I'm hurting you as well. I guess that we should say we're sorry. Say we're sorry. Say we're sorry. I guess that we should say we're sorry. Say we're I guess that we should say we're sorry.